to Too Many Hats podcast with your hosts with the most, Tony and Lavelle. Every morning from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We also have Queen Watkins with Clock Dead. Tune in with us and have a great time. Let's talk about it right here. Too Many Hats podcast.
Top of the morning to you, my beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. It's Hump Day Wednesday, man. It's your host with the most, Tony Mays and Lavelle Salter. We got another doozy for you today. And it's something, man, like, and we don't really always talk about, but somebody brought it up to me the other day, and I thought it was worth talking about. And, you know, anything that help us to become better, be better, do better, you know, I want to talk about it, man. But first, let me give a shout out, man. I want to give a shout out, man, to my wife, man. My wife is the most supportive person I know, bro. Like, I don't care, man. She is very supportive. And I just want to, man, take some time out this morning to shout her out, man. Not just my wife, but Lavelle's wife, Dawn, man, who's very supportive on his side and very supportive. And so we want to shout out the wives today. And you know what? I think it's about time we bring them on, man. We're going to have to bring them on. So Dawn, Monica, y'all get ready. We're going to have to bring y'all on because we've been talking about this and we haven't done it yet. We've been talking about it for almost 2 years now. Bringing the wives on and talking to the wives about how this podcast has impacted their lives and, you know, maybe some pros and cons about it, you know. And so we're going to bring them on so we can really sit down and have a conversation about it. Good morning, Miss Gwen. And so today, we want to kind of talk about, it's not a very popular topic. It's not. Burial versus cremation. But at some point, this is gonna happen to all of us, right? And as much as I don't like talking about it, there's a need, and the need is a lot of us, since we don't go get insurance or have the proper insurance when it's that time. And we got to go establish GoFundMe's and all this other stuff. And so it's you know, it's good to know what you're going to have to pay for if you're going to have to pay for something, what you're going to have to pay for, and what makes sense. Not only that, I want to kind of look at it too from maybe a historical context of how maybe this kind of came about, you know. I mean, we can go way back when you're talking about that. And then we want to just maybe kind of look at some pros and cons of each one, you know, because one may be like, you know, my mom has literally already paid for her funeral. Not that she, you know, wishing nothing happened, but she said, you know, I don't want that to be something that y'all have to worry about on that day, right? And so she took the time out to go by the funeral home and took care of all of her services, what she wanted done, how she wanted done. And I was surprised and shocked when she came back and said, look, I'm being cremated. But they're going to do a service. I'm going to rent a casket and they're going to do a service for me. And then they're going to cremate me. And then, you know, I already paid for all that. And so I didn't really, I mean, because, you know, the way a person want to be put away is the way a person want to be put away. And so I didn't have any problem. But I know some people that may go against, you know, their beliefs. When I talk about cremation, And but you got to think about it, y'all. There's a lot that go into this when you start talking about um, cremation versus the actual burial. And to be honest, which we'll get into that. So when you think about cremation versus burial, burial versus cremation, what is the first thing that comes to your mind, right? Um, it's probably emotional because it's an emotional decision that has to be made. Um, it's it can be cultural, a cultural decision. And it definitely adds a whole lot of different types of financial layers to it. And so um, it may be something that you have to really think about and consider prior to jumping into it. Uh, but yeah, so there are emotional aspects to it, cultural aspects to it, and then there are different financial layers that kind of help people make the decision or persuade a person one way or the other, right? And so, why is the decision important? If you're gonna do burial or cremation, why is that's so important? I think probably one of the most essential aspects of it is you need to know what the burial is, what it really consists of, and what the cremation is and what it consists of, so that you can uh, make whatever, if it's a financial decision for you, or if it's just a cultural thing. You just kind of want to know. Sometimes we've done stuff out of tradition for so long, and it's just tradition. But we ain't everybody in my family done been buried, and nobody never been cremated. Well, maybe it's just first for everything. And so I don't want us to not um think about it or look at it. As a matter of fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this up on the screen because this may be something that somebody might want to kind of write down in terms of these pros and cons, and some of the things that go into it. So and you may or may not be able to see this, um but it's up there. So I do have it up there. Right. All right. So when you look at the burial process, right? You got to talk about, first of all, what funeral home is probably gonna get it. It's so small, y'all. I'm gonna take it back down because that's really small for y'all, and I don't want nobody struggling trying to look at that. So that's really small. So first of all, you got to think about, okay, so what are we going to do in terms of funeral home? You got to select a funeral home. Some people have worked with funeral homes, different funeral homes, all their life. That's all they know. It's because it's the family funeral home. Not necessarily the family owns it, but everybody in the family goes to that particular funeral home. And that could be good, because that means you've established a rapport, you've established a relationship with that particular funeral home, and they may not try to bust your head, for lack of better words. I remember this was probably, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And this is not going to be a very popular topic, but I think it's one of those ones that's well needed, because people need to understand what you're facing when you face those decisions, how you go about it. And it may make those decisions a little easier for you, just kind of understanding those decisions. But this guy, he worked for a funeral home for a good little while. He was a young guy, and he had worked for a good little while. And when he finally and I don't want to say he came to his senses, because that would mean that everybody else that works currently as a mortician or whatever then lost their mind. No, but I'm gonna say when he came to himself, when he finally came to himself, he realized that what was going on was not something he wanted to be a part of, and so he made a video highlighting this, the negative connotations of it, and he basically talked about how um, that his main goal when you walked into that facility was to get all your money. if you had a, especially if you had a if you told him you had an insurance policy, right? um and then because if you tell them you got an insurance policy, the first thing they tell you is, or ask you is, how much is the policy? They want to know that for a reason. If you said, oh, the policy is 25,000, they want to get as much as that 25,000 as they can possibly get. Yeah, Miss Gwen, it may not be popular, but it's necessary. Making decisions, she said, making decisions while not in the beginning stages of grief releases a lot of stress. Yeah, and I think this will kind of help people kind of navigate through those decisions just maybe a little bit better. I ain't gonna say it's gonna make it any easier, but it may make it make the decision making part of it when you're trying to select a little easier. So anyway, he was highlighting how that his main objective that they taught him is to get all the money he can get. And so he even said that in their particular funeral home, they had a different book for people who had insurance policies with prices, different prices for them. I said, what? Yeah, they had a different book with different prices where they would literally charge them more because they wanted to get more out of them for the funeral, right? And so he exposed a lot of that stuff. And it really wasn't something that was kind of new to me, because I always tell people, if you're going, whatever funeral home you're going to, unless you have a really good relationship and rapport with the people where you know them and you've been knowing the family for a long time and they won't screw you. But I always tell people, if you can help it, if you got the money in the bank, just tell them you paying cash. Because if you tell them you got an insurance policy, they finna come at you. So I always say, hey, I'm paying cash. And it's good. Monica and I have this policy. I forgot what they actually call it. But it's when somebody passes, and we just have it on ourselves, because I didn't really never think to get it on the children. It's probably something I probably need to look into now. But it's just on me and her right now, and we've had it for I don't know, probably 25 years. But when you pass, it immediately pays you out a lump sum within 24 hours. It pays you a lump sum of money out that you can use to take care of those expenses up front. And that way, your insurance policies, you don't have to do. So we got that in play. I forgot what they call it, but if you, I can the company that I got it through, I can put that out there where you guys can maybe look into it if there's something that you want. But they pay us a lump sum in like 24 hours of the person expiring, and all we have to do is take that money and use that for the expenses or whatever. So it's very, it's crucial, man. Like, that you understand. Like I said, it might not be a very popular topic, but you definitely want to try to understand. So you have to make those decisions. And those decisions can be based on, again, emotional, cultural, or just their way in. How has this what are the family's expectations? If you the spouse or if you the mom, you might not care what the other family thinks. You know what I'm saying? But it happens. You have to discuss this during a period of grief, and this tears families up because one family member want to do this and one family member want to do that. Or the siblings, if the parents have gone on and the siblings are left to make, and the person wasn't married and didn't have any children or whatever, and the siblings have to make a decision, sometimes it tears up the family. But you have to look at whatever the family expectations are, And I told you sometimes generational traditions weigh in, the stress of money, and so you have to do your best to normalize this process. Even though you're facing grief, you have to try to normalize this process during this period of grief. And you know, there might not be for you no right or no wrong. Who knows? But at least understanding what a burial is, the definition process. We're going to talk about that, what a cremation is, the definition process, the pros, the cons, just kind of understanding that may help you make that decision a little better on down the line. But so, you know, the first thing you're going to have to do is select someplace that's going to handle the body, whether it's cremation or a burial, right? So what is a burial? A burial involves, matter of fact, let me give you the actual definition. I want to be able to read you the actual definition. All right. It's the action or practice of it. They call it interring a dead body. And that's basically where you put the body in the ground. Or sometimes they have plots where they put the body in a vault above ground. You know, they have those as well. So it does not necessarily mean that you will be in the ground, but you might go and purchase a vault where they have these really nice vault places above ground where you can commit the body, right? And a grave is where the burial or the ground is where it's basically the grave is where the remains are found for that person, that individual, right? So you got cemetery plots that you have to take in consideration for, caskets, vaults, and the services that go along with that, right? And that's not easy. That's not easy sitting down trying to figure out, hey, what in the world, what kind of casket? And so a lot of times people choose the casket based on people's favorite color. Well, they know their favorite color was green, so let me find something green and put them having. Or then they tell the whole family we're gonna be wearing green and gold at the funeral, or their colors navy. Or sometimes it's a favorite team, and so they kind of whatever that favorite team is. You know, they was a diehard Steelers fan, so we gotta have the casket gonna have to be black and gold, and everybody wear black and gold. So that's whatever that is. You know, that's something that you need to think about as it relates to getting the casket, right? Picking out where the body is going in the ground. If they're military, they have military places for that. If not, and sometimes them plots can cost a lot of money too, depending on where you're going. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute when you talk about them plots. But you got to pick out the casket. Then they're gonna, if you want a sealed vault where the water can't get in. Let me tell you something. If you put that thing 6 feet underground and you call yourself sitting there with a waterproof vault, I don't think there's such thing, because there have been so many instances where people say, I paid for a waterproof vault and something happened at the grave, they had to dig up and the thing full of water. So the vault, in my opinion, in some cases is probably, but I think now in the state of Tennessee, you have to have some type of vault, you know, or something put the casket in. I think I don't know that for sure, but I'm almost kind of, I don't want to say I'm positive, but I do think I'm leaning toward that heavily, that you have to have some type of vault to put the casket. You can't just put the casket directly into the ground, I don't think. And then the services. If that church was a believer or non-believer, if that person was a believer or non-believer, you got to think about the services, the church, all of that, right? Where that body is gonna have to go, and that could be very, very tough. Just that part of it, right? And so some of the maybe the pros of this. Wait a minute, what's going on? Nah, I ain't trying to do that. Some of the pros of this. So you have. I'm navigating. I'm targeting 2 or 3 different screens, y'all. So you have the pros of the burial. It's a permanent grave site for visitation, right? A lot of times it is tradition with the family, so it's real familiar. And most of the time we try to use a grave site that the grandmama and them was buried in, auntie, uncle, cousin, mama, sister, whoever, and we try to get all the family members close together in that area. So the graveside is a permanent place for visitation for that, where you can go out on their birthdays and holidays and whatever, just go out there and put flowers, whatever you want to do, whatever tradition is for you. It could be a great cultural and religious alignment. That's a pro. And then a lot of times, and people may not even think about this, but sometimes just having that structured ritual of going to that grave site, being able to on the holiday, helps with the closure of when you're trying to get over the grief and all that. Sometimes those rituals help with that closure, right? And then you have some cons. And these are some challenges that you need to consider. When you choose burial, there are going to be some higher costs, and sometimes even some hidden fees that they don't tell you about, right? You got to think about the environmental impact of the land use and the embalming. Think about that. And so if you are a person that likes to move around, travel, or you're thinking about relocating, now that makes it tough because your loved one is buried in a certain town and you got to relocate, somewhere else. So now you have less flexibility for relocation. If you are a person that it has to be part of that ritual where you go and you visit them on certain days, or Saturday is your day, you go by the grave and talk to mama, ongoing maintenance obligations, right? The place where you have the body may say, hey, well, we charge, because we keep the grounds and all that stuff clean, and we charge a $40 a month ongoing maintenance obligation fee. So that's a long term, or that could be a hidden fee that they didn't tell you about up front. Good morning, Miss Paulette. And then you got to think about, okay, so those are some pros and cons, just some small, well, I ain't gonna say small because they could be large pros and cons of the burial. And then you have the cremation. So let's look at the definition of the cremation. And I'm toggling again, y'all, between several screens here. All right. So the cremation definition, by definition, is the disposal of the dead person's body by burning it to ashes, typically after a funeral ceremony, right? But then that's the definition. But there's a real meaning of cremation. The term cremation comes from the Latin word crematio, which means to burn. In ancient times, dead bodies were burned as part of funeral rites in several cultures around the world, including the Greeks, Hindus, and Romans. Let's see if the Bible has something to say. According to the most biblical study websites, there is no explicit scripture command or against for or against cremation. So for those who may think that it's biblically incorrect, there's nothing in the Bible that supports or speaks against cremation, right? So there are no passages that forbid cremation according to the most biblical scholar. However, some passages describe the standard death practices during these times. So back in probably a lot of the Old Testament, there was a lot of burning the body and all of that, right? And then a lot of the New Testament, they talked about putting those bodies in a grave, or putting them in a tomb or whatever. Even Jesus was put in Joseph's new tomb, So, so that's that could be the difference. And a lot of times, if you just think about the definition, it almost seemed horrific. And maybe that's the image that plays in people's mind. I don't know. Because you think about it seems horrible to dispose of a dead person's body by burning it to ashes. That just seemed kind of hard, but that's the definition of what the cremation is. So I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or not sugarcoat it. That's just the definition of it, right? And so this is a process that's part of the process, or could be part of the process that you have to make in the decision making process. Now I can tell you right off the rip that the cremations are going to be a lot cheaper than having a burial, and it's generally a one-time fee. There are no extra fees really involved in it, right? So when you're thinking about having services or whatever, because there could be, so let's talk about this. So you picked your funeral home that you're going to use, right? And then you've decided, hey, long term, we're not going to do a burial, we're going to do a cremation. But what we do want to do is we want to have a display of the body. So we want to have a service where we rent a casket, and you can do that. You can rent a casket, and depending on that funeral home's process, sometimes that casket can be, and in the relationship, depending on the relationship, that'd be like, man, we'll just throw you a casket in there, and you just have for your service, but then now you have that fee of them having to, if you're having it at a church, getting that body to a church. So now you have to pay for that car that's going to take that body to the church. And now not only are you taking that body to the church, you have people, funeral directors who have to be there as a family, get up and walk around and view the body, because they got to open the casket up and lift the body up, then lift the body back down and so there's a lot involved in that. So you got to pay, you're going to pay something for that, right? And that really just depends on your relationship with that particular funeral home, if you have one. And so after that is over, you've had your service. You may want to have urns. You may want to put the ash in the urn. So you got to think about an urn, a nice urn. Or I know for my brother, when we cremated my brother, we had an urn, a really nice urn that we ordered for my nephew, and then we had, for all our siblings, we did a bracelet. So we sent them these bracelets, and they put some ashes in each one of these bracelets that we have. So we all have, a part of it. And so you got to think about that. They got urns, bracelets, necklaces, lockets. They got all kinds of stuff. Some people just like to scatter, and they might tell you, depending on what that cultural belief is or what that person wants, that person said, hey, I love the surf. I love the ocean, the water. I want y'all to scatter my ashes across the Lake Michigan or the Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean. Then, if the person leaves that to you, then that's something that you may have to do, So you think about the urns, if you're going to get an urn or you're going to scatter it, or some people bury the urn. They get the urn and they bury the ashes. They put the ashes in a box or whatever, and they bury it somewhere in their backyard or whatever. And then there's columbarium placement. And so let me give y'all the definition of what that is, because I don't ever want to give y'all a word and we like, what the heck is he talking about? It's called a columbarium placement. COLUMBARIUM placement. And it says columbariums are specialized, often outdoor structures with niches designed to securely house cremation urns in cemeteries, churches, or memorial gardens. So I've seen these places. I just never knew what they were called. But they got these little places. It may be at a, they may have them at some burial plots where they have this wall thing too, where people have, and they like these little boxes, and you can stick the urn in them, and you can lock them, and then you can put a plate with their name on them. So they call those some people call them mausoleums, where they have mausoleums like that, and then they also have these columbariums. So Miss Paulette said, first Miss Gwen said, correction, Tennessee law does not require a burial vault or outside container for burial. However, most Tennessee private cemeteries mandate an outer burial container. So Tennessee does not, but a lot of the grave sites do. I guess that's what she's saying, to prevent the ground from sinking. Okay, ensuring easier maintenance and landscaping stability. Okay, that makes sense. Ms. Paulette said, I told my family members I want to be cremated. I want to be remembered in the heart without feeling guilty for not visiting my grave. We're gonna get to that too. But that's a very good observation. That's a very good observation. Ms. Gwen said alternatives. Specialized cemeteries may allow burial without a vault for green or natural burial disclosure. Funeral homes must provide a price list for outer burial containers before purchase, and cannot claim they are legally required if they are not. Okay. So yeah. And then you got to talk about the memorial services. If you're not going to display the body, if you're going to have a memorial service where you just put maybe a picture up the person and somebody get up there and have some words, and you still give just like a regular service, but it's more of a memoriam where you just kind of get up there and talk about the person, and everybody pretty much eulogizes the person because everybody get up and tell their favorite stories and all that stuff. Now, here are some of the pros of cremation. It's a lower overall cost, and actually it's becoming and growing more popular every day. This is kind of more like the popular thing, and I think it's more popular now because a lot of people have gotten away from a lot of the traditions of we got to put it in the ground. I got to go visit the grave, like Miss Paulette said. I got to go visit the grave, and feeling guilty about not getting out there. And they got to get out there and see that the place where the burial ground is not being upkept properly. We've seen instances where funeral burial places have been desecrated. The place itself is just not keeping up the plots, and they got people buried in places and then lost with people to bury it, all this kind of stuff. We done seen all these horror stories that could be very, very scary. I really don't want to say this, but I know a place where I have some relatives that are buried, and the place has since built a parking lot on top of some of the graves, and it's the whole idea of it is just horrible. And so that's another thing. Like it's just so much going to that. Like I don't want to be a part of that. So, but the pros of cremation and why it's growing in popularity: lower overall cost, flexibilities for families in different locations, more control over memorial timing, because you ain't gotta get the body out of here. We gotta be it to the grave site by a certain time. You don't have to be rushed in that memorial time and people getting up and saying what they or whatever. Then there are eco-friendly options available, right? And here are some of the cons of cremation, some of the potential downsides to it. There may be some religious or cultural objections in the family where people, I don't believe in that. We shouldn't be cremated. They got something to say. They ain't got a nickel. They ain't got a dime towards it, but they, they got all the answers. And that's generally how it is. The person that's saying, no, I don't believe mama should be dead. And then how much you got towards the burial then? I ain't got nothing. I just lost my job. I ain't got nothing. Okay then. Well, you do know mama didn't have no insurance policy, right? Okay. Well, that's why we cremate. The lack of permanent site, unless planned. Again, if you got it in the urn and you got it sitting up on the mantle, that could be permanent or that could be moved, because if you relocate, you can take that with you. Scattering regulations. So depending on where you are, there may be regulatory issues against you just going to just scattering somebody's ashes. I think a lot of people, when they, when you see it on the movies, it's generally one or two people that go. It's not a whole lot of family members is out there scattering the ashes. And maybe one or two family members that person entrusted to make sure that their ashes get scattered. The emotional discomfort for some families. So some families maybe, I don't just agree with the crematory stuff, man, and if that may be one of those issues, they just, it's an emotional discomfort for them, right? But when you talk about the environmental considerations, green burials and eco cremations, compare land use versus emissions, the biodegradable urns and the natural burial grounds. You got, you can encourage your listeners to research local green options, like whatever in your area that represents maybe some green options. That if you one of those people that's one of those eco-friendly people and you pro green and all that stuff, then those people are probably going to look up some alternatives in this matter. But if you don't really care about that, or you're not a environmentally friendly person or eco-friendly person, then that might not be something that even crosses your mind, right? But then there's just a cost comparison. We've talked about how burials could be quite expensive. The overall process could be quite expensive, and cremations can be cost a lot less. So you have to definitely do a cost comparison, and to be honest with you, a financial reality check. You ain't got it. You just don't have it. You can't do it, right? So you can't go out there and spend $15,000 that you don't have, and you can't spend somebody else's money, because sometimes this happens, and I've seen this happen a lot, where family members, where the person has expired, does not have a policy on themselves. But then maybe a family member, a sister, a brother, somebody has a policy on them that they've been paying on. Well, you can't expect for that person that's been paying on that policy to automatically say, well, I got a policy on them, and we're going to use this policy to bury them. I mean, that would be cool, but you can't just expect, because you ain't put in on that policy. You got a policy on, this is a policy I've been paying on, and I've been paying on this policy. So they baby can have some money, whatever, And so, because I've done that in the past. I put policies on my siblings and stuff like that, and it'll help if nobody has a policy on them, and if they ain't got a policy on them. So Ms. Gwen said older people, especially older than us, prefer burials instead of cremation, mostly because of cultural norms during their time. Cremations are most often driven by finances first, and secondly, the deceased wishes. Well, I think a lot of the deceased, or a lot of the older people now are even deciding to go cremation. The ones who are saying they want to do it, like my mom. My mama, I thought my mom would be more on the traditional side, Miss Gwen, but she was like, "No, putting all that money in the ground for what?" And then I think her just hearing some of the the horror stories about burial places and cemeteries that have just not taken care of people, or went out there and dug people back up and robbed the grave. Just all kinds of stuff, man, that you know probably just kind of influence her decision, you know. Um, but there is a financial reality check. So you have the let's look at maybe some of the average costs of a burial versus a cremation. So cremation is generally more affordable, and it's generally between $1,500 to $3,000. It offers flexibility for scattering or keeping remains. Burials offer a traditional, permanent, and often religious memorial site, but it's typically more expensive and requires more space. A burial cost can range from 7,000 to over 9,000 due to the caskets, the vaults, cemetery plots. And so when you think about the costs, there's about a six to $8,000 difference, and sometimes even more than that, depending on. I've seen people say that their funeral cost $16,000 when they got through, because now you're just talking about the burial. When you're talking about 7 to 8, what about all the stuff that the funeral home charges? The cars, the escorts, all of this stuff. You know, it's a lot more involved. You end up paying. I've seen people pay up to $16,000, and I'd be like, 16,000? You must be crazy. And I already told my wife I wish she would put $16,000 on me for in a no. You better rent her if you want to. And to be honest, I don't like the idea. So this is just a personal view, and this is why that ticker going across the bottom. The personal views is not, I don't represent no other entity or nothing. It's my personal view. My thing is, I want people to remember me like I am now, right? I want people to remember me the happy, jovial, smiling, person. I don't want people to remember me. They walk in and they look at a body. Oh, he just look like he sleep. Oh, they put him away nice. Oh, I don't want that. That's not what I want. That's not the last vision I want people to have of Tony Mays. So my thing to my wife is, why spend the money? Because that's not my I don't want people to remember me that way. And if I don't want people to remember me that way, then why have an open casket that shows I'm sitting up there with my suit on, and I don't want to be remembered that way. I want people to remember me laughing and smiling, joking, and having a good time. That's how I want to be remembered. I don't want to be remembered laying up there with a nice suit on, and people saying they sure put him away nice. He looked just like he was asleep. I just, for me, I don't want that. So, don't spend all that money on me like that. don't do it. And she may feel totally different when it's that time, but I've told her that's how I feel about it. So, she do what I still told her she do what she want to do, but that's what I done told her. So, and you may feel different about it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I can't tell people how to feel about it. But I can tell you this. That financial reality check, when that financial, when they ready for you to drop that money off, that money on, as Queen say, you make up your mind real quick. Really, really quick, if you can afford the burial, or you need to just go cremation. And so I think, again, if you have a great relationship, or you've been dealing with a funeral home throughout your family history, then they may do you well and may say, you know what, we're gonna make this as best for you as we can make it. And I've seen that happen. I've seen actually seen that happen as well. So but I think the most important thing that we can do is pre-plan. Already like we already have where the money is gonna come instantly, so we can take care of whatever we need to take care of. But start pre-planning it. That's not to say, look, y'all, being ready to go and planning is two different things. Come on now. We just pre-plan. A lot of people think that that's, well, you start planning it out, then it happened. No, just try to pre-plan so you can reduce some of the burden on your family members. And people, I can tell you right now, people that don't really think about this, don't never have no insurance policy, don't want to pay for no insurance policy because they think that take too much money because they too busy enjoying life. Those are the people that want to leave this burden on everybody else. I've seen it happen so many times, even when I worked in the title loan business, and people would come in and basically title, give us the title to their vehicles to try to get money. And you was like, they'll come in, you could tell they say, you everything okay? Well, now I just lost some man. I'm trying to get this so I can try to help pay for some of the funeral. So they come in there, you gonna put this kind of burden on people. They gotta come in or they gotta go borrow money from somewhere because you didn't have a policy, or they gotta do a GoFundMe and all this stuff. That to be honest with you, it's embarrassing to me. It would be embarrassing to me if I, if my wife my children didn't have a policy on them, and I said, well, I gotta go do a GoFundMe, and and they were like, bro, you didn't take care of your family to the point where it's embarrassing to me, right? And that's just to me. So I would say, don't leave your family in a situation. We used to say, don't leave your family with nothing, with just bills. Leave them something other than them bills. Phyllis said, good morning. I don't view bodies because I want to remember them as they were. And that's how I want to be remembered. I don't want you to view me laying up there and say, oh, okay, he looked like he sleep. Phyllis said, I don't understand the logic of wanting to see the bodies. That's my personal opinion. Don't forget tombstones at the cemetery. Yeah, that's what I say. There's more fees involved in tombstones at the cemetery. I told my children don't spend a lot of money to be put in the ground, a box or a vault. Your body's still going because of skeleton. Yeah, so it's it's gonna it ain't gonna preserve the body that much. It's still gonna eventually, them worms gonna get a hold to you. So, but if my wife decides to do it, just don't have the casket open. Just put it up there. If somebody want to think of the body in there, what I don't know. I just prefer not to be seen that way. Yeah. Personally and family factors, how to decide. You want to look at the values, your beliefs, the wishes of the deceased person. You want to look at your budget. You want to look at logistics. You have people coming from all over the country. If they don't live in your state or city, you have people coming from all over the country. Some may be coming out of the country, depending. So you got to think logistically. So what if the weather is bad? Like we've had this bad weather and funerals have to be put on hold. We were in Texas the other week when this bad weather first started, and the guy said we had 4 funerals planned for the day, and we had to cancel. We had 5, 4 in the memorial service that we went to, and he said that we had to cancel the 4 because they were burials, and we couldn't get out there because of the weather. They couldn't get out there and dig, so we had to cancel those 4. So you got to think about all of that stuff, man, when you're doing. But the memorial service still went on because that's all it was. It was a memorial service, right? So these are all things, man, you have to consider, you have to worry about. You want to honor that person's life more than the method, if that makes sense, right? And document whatever your wishes are. Whatever your wishes are, put it in writing and leave it for people so they ain't got to try to figure out what want to be done. I've seen people, man, some person pass and they be like, the person passed on Monday and they were like, the funeral gonna be Friday or Saturday. I'd be like, how they plan all that quick? It was already planned out. That person had already paid for their stuff, pre-planned. They had already told them what their wishes was. It didn't take long. They like, we doing this Saturday. You know. And so document your wishes. Whatever your wishes are, you document them. And then, just make sure that you leave it somewhere, whether in a wheel or something. And have a will, y'all. Have a will. If you own anything, have a will and leave it to somebody. So your stuff, and even with a will, or either do a trust, put the stuff in trust, because even a will, sometimes your stuff could get tied up in probate, even with a will. So maybe put everything in a trust, right? So hopefully you guys got something out of this information today, these pros and the cons, burials versus cremation. I hope it helped you some kind of way. I think it was a very good topic in lieu of, that people don't really like to talk about this type of stuff, right? We don't really want to talk about death, burials, or cremations, or none of this stuff, right? But it's something that happens. It's a natural part of life. As sure as you live, you're gonna die at some point. Whether it's 90, when you're 90, 100, 35, 40, things happen. And so it's best to be prepared than rather not be prepared. Ms. Gwen said, our mom had a traditional burial 20 years ago and told us we were going to forget to come and put flowers on her grave. 20 years later, with the help of two of my siblings, we still maintain her grave site, with me changing her flowers every month for about the last 10 years. It was initially to honor the promise made to her by my siblings. Now it's to honor her resting place and to keep it presentable, because she is right next to the walk other people's past for their service. I attend and assist and plan. That's awesome. Pre-planning is great. Just make sure you trust someone to follow your wish. That's why I said put it in the wheel. I have seen people go totally against people's wishes. Put it in a wheel. Put it in a wheel and make somebody the executor of that wheel, and have a backup in case something happens to that executor. Have a backup. So in our will, we don't have burial plans actually in our will, but we've had conversations. My daughter is the executive of our will, and we've had conversations with her about all of that stuff. So and it's good to revisit that stuff every couple of years. You want to update your will every couple, because things are changing. You might get a whole new set of furniture, new car. So you got to update your will to reflect those things. You might get a new insurance policy. So you have to update your will to reflect those things. I got a copy, like I told you guys before. I have a last will and testament. I have a good copy, great copy of it that you can go in there and change it and put your own information in there. I have a living will where you can go in there and put that. This is another place, Phyllis, if you like have to be hospitalized or whatever, that living will put whether you want to be resuscitated or not. Because we have one on my mom, and my mom already said, look, don't be trying to bring me back if the Lord calling for me. She said, don't resuscitate me. So she got a do not resuscitate in hers, and it basically, with the last will, I got that too, where you can go in there. The living will, you can go in there, and it basically asks you prompts and questions where it says, hey, do you want do not resuscitate? Do you want this in the event of this? Do you want this? And these yes or no questions, and then you sign it. And I think that form has to be notarized as well. But I have them. So, but it's good. And then you update that will every couple of years. It's time for us to update ours this year. And it's cool because Monica got a new vehicle and stuff like that. So it's time to update ours. And we also got a new grandbaby, so we got to add him to the wheel. So, all right, man. Let's clock this tea with our girl Queen Watkins. Oh Lord, she ain't got no sound. Can y'all can't hear her because I can't hear her. I know y'all can't hear her. I guess we ain't clocking that tea with Queen because There is no sound. All right. Ain't no sound, so we ain't clocking that tea with Queen. Well, okay. I'll give y'all a couple of y'all minutes back this morning. Then hopefully, again, something was said this morning that will help you better plan, or at least go out and think about planning. Miss Gwen said, Phyllis, on my Christmas break, I took my mom and allowed her to choose everything for her transition. Oh, that was cool. I only had to add date to the obituary and sign documents required at the time. Was POA power of attorney for both of my parents, living will and durable and medical power of attorney. It's good to have those two. If your parents are older, you might want to do it. I got a great durable power of attorney as well that handles all that medical stuff. You can sell property for them on their behalf, all of that stuff. I got those three things. I got that's ironclad: the durable power of attorney, the living will, and the last will and testament. I have all of those. So yes, it's good to have, especially when, if you got that, and when you're talking about bank accounts and all that stuff, you can do whatever. Yeah. So just make sure you got that stuff and you put that stuff in place. All right. But that's all I have. Give you guys a couple of minutes back today, man. Thank you guys again for sharing. Lavelle was, I guess, a little under the weather today. But we thank you guys for sharing and being a part of this broadcast today. And hopefully something was said, something was done to where you can go out there and start pre-planning for whatever, whenever that time comes. You can pre-plan and have that stuff already taken care of, and just so you can take some of the burden off of the family members who are having to grieve and plan this at the same time. So thank you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow, man. Same bad time, same bad place. Let's pray. Most gracious and eternal God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for another opportunity just to be able to share, oh God. We thank you for grace and mercy, God, for allowing us to be able to talk about planning, even though we're not trying to go that way just yet, oh God, but we still want to make sure that we are prepared and our loved ones are prepared, so that we can relieve some of the burden when that time comes. Oh God, we thank you for just your grace, your mercy, and peace, the kind of peace that passes all understanding. Oh God, we thank you for love. We thank you for your darling son, Jesus, who you sent to die on a hill called Calvary so that we might have a right to the tree of life. God, we thank you. We love you. It's in Jesus' name. We pray for all of our listeners and viewers, oh God, and we pray that you would grant them their heart's desire, whatever they stand in the need of, oh God, that you would grant it in grace. Oh God, we thank you. We love you. It's in Jesus' name that we pray and ask all of these things. Thank God and amen. We will see you guys tomorrow, same bad time, same bad place. 2 Men in Hats. Let's talk about it.
It's the 2 Minute Hats podcast with your host with the most, Tony and Lavelle, every morning from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We also have Queen Watkins with Clock Dead. Tune in with us and have a great time. Let's talk about it right here. 2 Minute Hats podcast.